Good entertainment. Ask Earl. Ask Earl.
Call the meeting to order. I want to welcome everybody here. Before we get started, I'd like to ask for Earl Funk or Councillor Funk to bring the opening, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This weekend, we spent the weekend in Halifax at the FCM, and I just want to talk about a few things about that. So we heard from our federal government leaders. We heard from Prime Minister Trudeau about funding intentions for municipalities, priorities he has for us. And we also heard from Mr. Scheer and Mr. Singh, who promises to work with us once elected. But what I want to share tonight is highlights, my personal highlights from the event. And one of my personal highlights is meeting Andrew Scheer. I got to meet Andrew Scheer with Councillor Michael Swagstra, and Councillor Susan Penner was nice enough to not be in the picture and take the picture for us, so that we could both post it to our Facebooks and get many, many likes. And that's one thing she sacrificed for herself. But another highlight, this is a big one for me, is meeting all the municipal officials from across Canada. We stand in line with them, we're waiting to go places, we're waiting to eat. We are going through trade shows with them, and we talk, and we look down at your badge, and we see where you're from, and we get to talk to them, and we get to share our victories. We also share some of our failures. I find that that's the greatest place to learn and gather ideas for our own communities. But the biggest highlight of the weekend for me was when we all got together after supper on Friday. And I guess last time we were in Halifax, we did this. We took the ferry to Dartmouth. And so I guess in the spirit of tradition, we did it again. And so we got to Dartmouth, we went up the embankment, and on the first row there was a little Celtic place, and we went into it, and it was just packed. And it was about 110 degrees in there. There's no air conditioning. It's an old building. So we got in there and we sat down. We sat down at this table, and there was 2 chairs left at our table, and that was the only chairs in the restaurant. Everything was full. So we started to do what we always do, joke around, tease each other, and make fun of everybody, like at the table. And all of a sudden, this couple walked in. And my wife looked up, and she noticed they were looking around for a seat, and they had no seat. So she, not just me, ever so gently, and once I got off the floor from falling off my chair, she said, "Go get those people." So I went and got them and brought them to our table. And that is where we met Rachel and Kevin. This is where the story gets good, because Rachel is a young lady from Ireland, and Kevin is a young man from the Philippines. If we go back 2.5 years ago, Rachel came to Canada and she started working. And because she was in Ireland and she wanted more, and she thought Canada would be a great place to get a job and start working and get experience. So she worked for almost a year, and nothing was happening for her, and so she figured she'd move back to Ireland. On the weekend before she moved back to Ireland, she met Kevin at an event. Kevin had come from the Philippines. He had an engineer licensure, and he was working for Jazz Airlines. So they spent the weekend together. They had a great time. She moved to Ireland. For 3 months, she could not stop thinking of Kevin. And so she decided to move back to Canada. She did. They've been dating for just over a year. This July, they are going to Ireland because one of her 4 brothers is getting married, and this is the first time her family is meeting Kevin. I felt like I was in the movies. Like it's just a love story like in the movies. But what I realized of all the things I learned at FCM, all the things I learned from municipalities, what strikes me the most and what teaches me the most is the life lessons we learn. And as I'm listening to Rachel and Kevin tell their story, I'm realizing how different we are. But I'm realizing there's more that makes us the same than makes us different. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Funk. We have the agenda in front of us. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Councillor Swagstra, moved by Councillor Swagstra, seconded by Councillor Penner. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. We have the minutes from May 15th in front of us. You've all had a chance to review those. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Fair, seconded by Councillor Siemens. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. There's no business arising from the minutes. Can I have a motion to excuse? Councillor Susan Penner, please. Councillor Funk, seconded by Councillor Penner. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. All right, we're just past 7:35, so we can move into the public hearings. 6A, we have bylaw 2094. This is in regards to Lexington Village. This is on page 5. I'm going to close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Workentine, I'll ask you to introduce this, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of council, this is an application for rezoning under City Bylaw 2094 for property along Mackenzie Avenue, otherwise known as Lexington Development. Owner of the property is is Goldmark Developments, Inc., with the applicant for the rezoning being Lowen Henderson Banman Legault LLP. Purpose of the rezoning is a number of parcels, as seen on the sketch that's provided in the council package, is to rezone a number of parcels that already exist under application for subdivision to RSF, residential single family, RLD, residential low density, and RMD, residential medium density. And the rezoning is pursuant to that subdivision to align the overall concept plan with the subdivision that has already been applied for. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. Comments received from community planning indicates that there are no objections to the application. With respect to the rezoning, recommendation is that City Council give bylaw 2094 second and third reading if there are no objections at the public hearing.
All right, thank you. We do have the applicant here today, or a representative of the applicant. Thank you. Is there anyone here wishing to object or have any questions on this file? Anyone here wishing to object or have any questions? I'll ask for a third time. Anyone here wishing to object or have any questions? Seeing none, does the applicant wish to speak? No, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Seeing none?
Question of administration.
You have a question of administration. Go ahead.
Mr. Workington, through you, Mr. Mayor. When we approve these subdivisions, do we know where the sidewalks go? I'm trying to avoid what happened on about a month ago regarding the sidewalk. When they do this, do we know where the sidewalks go, and is there any way that we can curb something like that from happening in the future in these, or is that done at some later stage?
In response, generally, with the city's construction spec, I believe when that matter came before council a couple of meetings ago, there was a sketch that was put up for information, which shows generally the location of sidewalks with respect to the public road allowance. It does depend on where the existing or where the municipal and other utility services are installed within that public right-of-way. So it does change from time to time. Secondly, the city does collect capital development fees from developers with the understanding that a portion of those fees are allocated for sidewalk development. However, due to the high level of construction activity that goes on, those sidewalks typically do not get installed in subdivisions until it's more or less 75 to 80% complete. At that point, it may cause concern to certain residents. However, the reason why sidewalks are installed at a later date is so that they don't incur damage during the general construction period. So other than generally being aware of where sidewalks would be located, i.e. which side of the street, that information is more difficult to determine, at least at this point, for example.
All right. Councillor Fair?
Yeah, one question further to that. So if there's a variance on the property, it would come back to council?
Correct.
So if there, like that situation that happened there, it would have come to council, council would have approved the variance for that development?
Mr. Fair, I think what you're referring to specifically is that corner lot that was changed somewhat from the original.
And you changed like there was a variance granted of 8 feet or whatever it was, 5 feet, and so that's why the sidewalk was displaced. Now, if that happens here, like it has to come to council in order to grant a variance, right?
If there is a variance application, yes, those particular items would generally appear before council. However, if development occurs based on the required setbacks according to the city's zoning bylaw, and there is no variance requested, then that is the standard that the development follows.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further questions, I will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Fair? Move to approve second reading. Thank you. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Siemens? Go ahead, Councillor Fair.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is something we all want to see more development. We want to see growth. That's what brings about our economy strength. And so it's good to see that a project such as this is moving forward, and looking forward to seeing it come to fruition. So,
thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Siemens? Anything further from council? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favour? Carried. Can I have a motion for third reading, please? Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Spykstra. Any discussion?
No discussion.
Anything further? No? Council, as we see this coming to these changes of land use coming to an end, or really coming to a beginning, an end for us and a beginning for a new neighborhood, we obviously see that this is an area that has been developing rapidly, and there has been a clear plan in place, which is good to see. There is also certainly some history to this property, in that it was one of those properties that we recently did annex from Hanover through a friendly annexation process. And so it's really good to see this land being developed with some medium density, some small lot usage, and also some larger lot usage. And obviously it's going to be good for the city to see this transpire over the next couple of years. Call for the question. All those in favor of third reading, please. Carried. Thank you. All right, let's move then to the next public hearing, and that's in regards to Variation V-2018-08. This is 426 Rockwood Street on page 16 of Council's package. Close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Workentine.
This application for variance file V-2018-08. The owner of the subject property is Square Prairie Ltd., with the applicant for the variance being Stacy Hees. Purpose of the variance is twofold. First off, to allow an accessory building of 3,000 square feet, whereas the maximum size permitted in the RR rural residential zone is 1,000 square feet. And secondly, to permit a home-based business to use a 3,000 square foot shop, whereas the cumulative size of all home-based businesses must not exceed 25% of the total gross floor area of the dwelling unit and accessory building, or 800 square feet, whichever is less. As mentioned, the applicant is proposing to build a 3,000 square foot shop to operate their concrete company out of. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There is no correspondence on the file. With respect to administration's observations, the intent of the rural residential zone provides for existing large lot rural residential development. City of Steinbach zoning bylaw limits the sizing of accessory buildings to that maximum 1,000 square feet. Based on the current zoning of the subject property, an accessory building is permitted subject to those particular limits. However, the requested variance is significantly larger, being approximately 3 times the maximum size permitted. However, precedents have been approved by council in the past for accessory structures that are larger than required or than permitted. However, Further observation also finds that the city's zoning bylaw policies are established to prevent or minimize current or future conflicts between land uses. The applicant proposes to use the property for commercial purposes by locating operations from its current commercial site without residing on the property. This then results in a commercial property in a residential area. Given the scale and the intended use of the proposed structure for business purposes, administration feels that it would be more appropriate for these business operations to be located in either a commercial or an industrial zone. Therefore, the recommendation from administration is that council approve an accessory building of 3,000 square feet. However, it is further recommended that City Council deny the request to permit a home-based business on the site to exceed the maximum permitted size as required under City of Steinbach zoning bylaw.
All right, thank you. We do have the applicant here today. Is there anyone here wishing to object or have any questions on this file? Is there anyone here wishing to object or have any questions? Is there anyone here wishing to object or have any questions? Seeing none, does the applicant wish to speak? Sure. Okay, please take the podium.
Yeah, basically,
And before you start, you do need to state your name and your address.
I'm Stacey Hayes, and my address of, I don't live on the property there. Does that matter?
No, just your home address, please.
Okay. 36026 Road 39E.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we want to build our shop there on the lot. We own the lot, and we've tried to subdivide the lot in the past to just sell off lots. It's a 1.3 acre lot. We were denied that to do it because we were denied the subdivision because there was a condition on the lot regarding land to the south for a future development that they would want to extend Rockwood through. We were told that we could subdivide one lot off, but we'd have to give the city a swath of land across there, which is equivalent to one lot. And I didn't think that was a great idea. To just give the city a lot, it would be a $75,000 lot. Just to benefit a developer that actually has the land currently for sale. So it doesn't look like there's any development happening there in the near future to the south. And yeah, so we weren't able to subdivide, so we thought, well, we already own this lot. We have a rental house on there. Can we build a shop on there as well for our business, to have a contractor yard for our concrete business? Because Stefan over here, my business partner, he lives just across the street there, so it'll be very convenient for us to have that shop there. And just living in the area, we just know there's lots of similar type businesses around the area, like Keen's Plumbing, for one example, is just across the street, and Crown Utilities. I have a paper here with highlighted shops. Do you guys want to see this? So the yellow highlighted areas.
Sorry, if you can't, you need to only speak through the microphone, otherwise, because it's...
Sorry, you can pass it down. The blue highlighted area is a proposed shop, and the yellow highlighted areas are all oversized shops on the surrounding lots in the area.
Very good.
So,
Anything else at this time?
no, that's about it.
All right. Are there any questions for the applicant? Councillor Penner?
Thank you. I've looked at your application, and in it you had talked about that at the present time you are renting property.
Currently, we're renting a shop.
And
Yeah.
are you renting within the city of Steinbach in an industrial park?
We're actually at 921 Main Street right now, which is just north of Rockwood. Just north of Rockwood across the highway, which is one of the shops highlighted there, which is a 5,000 square foot shop in the back of a residence.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Another question?
Go ahead.
The business that you do, is this an operational kind of business? Is this purely storage? Are you actually manufacturing in there?
It's going to be a contractor yard, so we store tools and stuff there. We do make concrete countertops, it's not a full-time thing. It's kind of some stuff we do in winter, but that would be done for that shop as well. It's not a retail store by any means. It's just a production of those, and then we would bring them to the site
Thank you. One more, and then we'll,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, one more, go ahead.
So in your business operations, then, are there going to be large concrete trucks driving
No.
to your site?
No, it's all mixed on site there, just we mix it ourselves, there's no concrete trucks coming there at all, it would just be the employees. We're a small company, we have 6 employees, including the 2 owners, so that's it, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Fair?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I thought that, I'm not sure whether the applicant is aware that we sell incubator lots in the industrial park for $75,000. You can probably sell that lot for 75, it might be something that,
If we were able to subdivide it.
right, and maybe if you wanted to subdivide it the way that it's laid out here, you could. I
Tried.
I, for one, okay, just a comment.
Yeah.
I had to give up some land as well to the city.
Yeah.
And I was reluctant to do so as well, but usually there's a reason for it.
You know what,
Sooner or later, I came to that realization, and
All right, so you have a question?
Can I comment
Any
on
other
that,
questions? No? All right, you can
respond.
you can respond.
I know that I've heard that from lots of people, where they say we've got to give the city land, and I totally get that. There's areas where the city has a development and they want to have, let's say, a green space or something like that, and you have to give up part of your land for that. But that's in a scheme of a big development. This is subdividing a lot, and giving up the land is not for us. It's benefiting only a developer that's behind us, right? It's not even, not even benefiting the city in that sense.
Okay, thank you. Further questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to clarify, this kind of goes along the same lines as Councillor Painter's question. So how much traffic would there be to this? How many cars going in and out, or how much?
We have three work vehicles, and like I said, we have 4 employees plus the 2 of us. So
you would have potentially multiple employees at the site.
typically, yeah, we start at 7 in the morning. The guys would come there and park there, and then we do our work in Winnipeg or in Steinbach or wherever our jobs take us for concrete work. And in winter, we usually go down to about just me and Stan. So it'd be two trucks there.
Thank
A
you.
question for administration that follows up on that.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my understanding is that there's a limit in terms of employees on a home-based business. My understanding is that I think 1 is the limit in terms of any time having on a home-based business. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you. Further questions? Thank you very much. All right, we will close the public hearing and open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed, or do you have further questions? Mr. Workney and I do have a question before we proceed. When it comes to the long-range plan for this area, and obviously the long-range plan is for access from Rockwood through to the other properties that are there, and then this lot becomes 2 lots, which would inevitably take place if that center piece is given up to the city for that right-of-way. This then would be a lot solely, this would be 1 lot with a home on it, and it would be another lot with a 3,000 square foot industrial, commercial type building on it. How would that then be treated if someone would want to purchase it or use it for something where they would have more than 1 employee?
My understanding of the Planning Act requirements, if there is an existing lot such as this one that winds up being split into 2 separate parcels as a result of a public road opening, doesn't necessarily create a traditional subdivision, i.e., even though the parcels would be separate, they would still be considered under 1 title. So, for example, it's not subdivision. It would be considered still 1 parcel legally. However, visually, it does create the scenario where there is an accessory use that is physically separate from the principal use, and the accessory use under the city's current zoning bylaw is not permitted without a primary principal use.
So what I'm hearing you say then is that this possibly could not be sellable on one side without the other being sold. Is that correct?
Correct.
So they would actually be joined even though they're not joined, and so they would have to go together. They couldn't be separated out.
Possibly, however, from a general comment, the principal use would be required before any such sale or change to the property could occur, i.e. development of a residential unit.
Thank you.
Question?
Councillor Swagster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to administration.
Go ahead.
Because it came up both during the presentation and during some of the questions, could you comment on or clarify the discussion around the reason why the land is set aside and why it can't be subdivided without giving to the city? Because that came up in the presentation and during the questions.
Yes, this particular parcel has been the subject of a concept plan that the city has dealt with over a number of years in the past with respect to proposed development to the south of the subject property. As a result of the primary and secondary access requirements for developments of that size, this was seen from the developer as a reasonable access point to be able to service that development, not only with just road access, but both sewer and water and other utilities.
Thank you. Further questions or comments or direction?
Yeah, I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Administration. Okay, this subdivision, I guess I'm a little bit hazy on that. Like if the applicant, suppose this development happens and he requests for a subdivision that would be in keeping with the roadway the way it is, would he be entitled to a subdivision, or are you saying that's not possible?
Subdivision under current rules wouldn't be permitted, as then it would create a principal use that is not permitted in that zoning category.
Okay, but if there's no building?
If there is a building.
Yeah.
If the lot is, or if the parcels are kept under one title, the house that exists on that property today would constitute the principal use, and therefore the shop being proposed would be considered an accessory use and would be permitted.
Permitted not as a separate, but as a joined.
As a joint use.
Thank you. Further questions before we move forward? Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Swagster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will make the motion to approve the administration recommendation, which is that we allow the accessory building, but that we deny the request to permit the home-based business on the site.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Penner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's two separate parts to the request. The first part is allowing a larger accessory building than the maximum. As has been noted, there is significant precedent for that in certain circumstances where it's felt that it would fit within the property. In this case here, we're talking about a very large parcel of land, and so on the size of land that we're talking about, allowing an accessory building to be 3,000 square feet is not unreasonable, and hence the administration recommendation to approve. However, the second request is the one that is the bigger change and is the bigger concern, because our bylaws specifically state that a home-based business must not exceed 25% of the total gross floor area of the dwelling unit and accessory building, or 800 square feet. The reason for this is very simple. We want businesses to locate in commercial and industrial areas. That's the reason why we have the zoning bylaws the way that we have them. We do allow home-based businesses, but they are small. And there's a reason they're small. They don't have lots of employees. They're not supposed to, because they're home-based businesses. What we're talking about here and the information that I'm hearing, even in terms of during the questions with coming up about there being more than one employee, that component would go against our zoning bylaw, and we can't start we're not going to start granting variances to allow that as well, because at the end of the day, then this is just for rezone commercial, and that's a completely different, that would be a completely different request before us. So again, I understand the intent, I understand the reasons behind it, but as far as allowing it for a home-based business, it's simply a building this size for commercial use should be located in a commercial or industrial zone.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Yes, to add to Councillor Swagstra's comments, I also have concerns about the use of the building as well, because this kind of operation will create a different level of noise than a smaller home-based business would. They're constructing concrete, I think shelving or countertops of some kind. So that obviously will require a noise and dust and all of the other attendant things that come with that kind of industry. So the reasons that we have home-based businesses and allow them in certain zoning is so that they can begin. There's a nucleus, and this is beyond a nucleus. This is, it needs to move out of the area into an area where it can grow and develop in the proper fashion.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Fair.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think that the motion is actually not in keeping with the request. The variance was for an outbuilding for a commercial enterprise. It was not for an outbuilding for residential, because they're planning to build a shop for their business. So I think that the motion doesn't address the variance at all. So I think I'll have a hard time supporting it. I agree with the intent of it, but I think that we either deny the variation or we approve it.
Thank you. Further discussion? Anything in closing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would say that it does address the request, and in terms of it answers the question. Yes, you can have a larger accessory building because of the size of the property. No, you can't locate your business in it. It certainly addresses the request, and it says no.
All right, Council, we obviously hear a few different thoughts on this. In the end, I think there is general consensus that there's not a lot of comfort around this council table when it comes to a home-based business in a 3,000 square foot unit on this property. When it comes to looking at this specific situation, it's somewhat unique because you have a potential situation where you will have a second, you will have an access moving through here eventually. And you can see on page 28 the general concept plan that has been put forward to council in previous times and is presently on our books for the future development of this area. And so with that, you can see that if we do approve the building being built but not the home-based business, I get the intent. But the reality is that in a number of years, we very well could have two lots that are conjoined that will then inevitably be in front of us again because there'll be a request to separate it out and have a home on one and a business on the other, making it not conducive to this area. And so I'm not comfortable supporting the motion to approve the variation. And but I am comfortable in supporting the idea of not having a home-based business there. So in a way, I'm in agreement, but not voting for the variation itself, saying that this building, if it is built, will inevitably be in front of us again because it will not be conforming to the general use that's wanted, and it will probably be a difficult situation for everyone involved. So I will not support the motion because I don't believe this building should be built there. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right. Let's move to 6C, Bylaw 2097, Variation V-2018-07. We have 122, 124 Brandt Street. This is on page 46. I'll close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Workentine.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, this is a public hearing that is actually to consider two specific matters, both a rezoning bylaw 2097 and also variance file V-2018-07 for properties with civic address of 122 and 124 Brandt Street. Suggestion is for council to hold a public hearing concurrently, however, deal with the application to rezone the property first, and if that proceeds, then move forward to consider the variance application. Purpose of application for bylaw 2097 is to rezone the properties from RLD, residential low density, to RMD, residential medium density. And the purpose of the variance application is to allow a rear yard setback of 19 feet, whereas a minimum of 25 feet are required in the RMD residential medium density zone. The applicants are proposing to rezone and requesting the variance for the property to allow for the development of a multifamily building on the subject parcels. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There is no written correspondence on file. With respect to community planning, correspondence received indicates no concerns with the application, and comments from Manitoba Infrastructure does indicate that the applicant will require the appropriate Highway Traffic Board permits before proceeding with development should the rezoning and the variance application be approved. With respect to the rezoning, it appears that this particular application is generally compatible with the neighborhood, and with respect to the rezoning, administration recommendation is that council proceed with second reading, subject to any objections that may be presented at the public hearing. And further, if there are no objections, council may proceed to third reading, and again, subject to the execution of a development agreement.
Thank you. We do have the applicants here today. Is there anyone here wishing to object or have any questions on this file? Okay, please take the podium and state your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Burgess. I live at 56 Donald Avenue in Steinbach, which is also on the west side, although a little bit further over from this development. This development is close to the corner where there's the Tim Hortons and the Co-op, a very busy corner. New developments are not a bad thing. I commend council on the first development and zoning that showed a good mix of uses. We do have our zoning bylaws for a reason. I'd like to commend the applicants for the detailed information that they've provided to council. Their plan is clear and shows very well thought out site plan that allows council to make an informed decision with respect to the application for rezoning. There's a few concerns, however, that I would like to identify. The applicant is asking that two lots, 122 and 124 Brandt Street, be rezoned from RLD residential low density to RMD residential medium density. According to table 4.1 of the Steinbach zoning bylaw, an RMD lot must be a minimum of 75 feet in width. This width requirement is set for a reason, to ensure that a medium density lot provides the appropriate space for multifamily dwellings, including but not limited to parking, green space, buffer zones, side, front, and rear yards. According to Manitoba assessment, these lots are 67 and 68 feet wide respectively and do not meet the width requirement of RMD. Now the argument might be that the lots are going to be consolidated, which might be okay if you had two lots that combined met the 150 requirement. Essentially, two lots times 75 feet in width. Approving two lots that are both smaller than the required width only compounds the issue. The plans that have been submitted pre-assume that an approved variance for a reduced rear yard of 19 feet, a clear indication that the proposed development is too big for the actual lot size. In this case, it would appear that without the variance, the plan would not be able to accommodate the required parking. With the presumed variance, the plan meets the parking requirements of 26 stalls, excluding any accessibility parking, at the expense of the outdoor rear yard space. As this is a multifamily development on a major route, making the rear yard space is extremely important as families with children need adequate outdoor space away from the street. Question for the developer would be, with this development, is there a plan to remove all the beautiful trees that back that yard and back onto other developments? Additionally, the requirement for 1.5 plus 10% for parking, most families do have two vehicles. If tenants are taking up all of the parking, with the presumed variance going and being approved, there would still be inadequate parking for guests. Where are they going to park? It's right on a busy highway. My third concern contains several issues related to traffic and access. The location of this development is on a major highway within 220 feet of a major signaled intersection, which sees frequent accidents, is a popular coffee spot, and a popular ice cream spot at the Co-op, and close proximity to a school. The site map provided did not give a clear indication of where the entrances and exits to this development would be. With the location of the garbage pickup at the front, is there enough room for the garbage truck to enter and exit without having to back onto a major highway? Is there adequate space for service vehicles such as hydro gas and, more importantly, fire and rescue to access these buildings? With no break in the medium for traffic to exit this development, traffic wanting to head north will most certainly head south to U-turn at Lumber Avenue. I'm aware that Council just upheld a decision to keep the no U-turns on Main Street because of safety concerns. Is this situation going to be any different? Administration has already referred to the traffic impact study and that it must be done before the development moves forward. It's certainly going to impact traffic. My fourth concern has to do with sidewalks, which seems to come up frequently. The development is proposing multifamily buildings where there will most certainly be children. The west side of Brandt does not currently have any sidewalks along this section. In addition, where would the people be expected to cross? Kids are going to cross at the shortest possible route, and this is a significant safety issue. Given that the middle school is right at the end of 5th Street, which is directly across, you can imagine how many kids are going to just simply cut across. Given Manitoba has 8 months of winter and 4 months of construction, students will have to navigate snowbanks in winter because there are no sidewalks if they want to cross at the signaled intersection. With the expansion of the city to the southwest, will this stretch of Brandt eventually require a sidewalk? And does the current plan take that into account? And last but not least, we have recently seen that our infrastructure is getting old and subject to failure, as demonstrated by the week of May 25th, when Brandt experienced 4 water main breaks in less than a week. Will our current infrastructure hold up to the added pressure of this development in combination with the development currently in progress on Cambridge Way? To summarize, the developer has presented a well-thought-out plan that would be suited well for a larger lot. The issues with this rezoning are it simply does not meet the zoning requirements. It presupposes a variance in the plan that was submitted. The traffic and both vehicle and pedestrian is a concern, and consideration for the sidewalks and infrastructure need to be addressed. For those reasons, I'm objecting to this rezoning. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just a clarification, you're objecting to the rezoning and also the variation, is that correct?
Yes, that is.
Thank you.
That's correct.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to object or have any questions on this file? Yeah, go ahead. You've seen the drill?
I've seen the drill. David Burgess, I live at 56 Donald as well. I'm just going to add a couple of comments to my wife's here. The other thing is the alignment of the buildings from what I've seen from the site plan. This is going to sit way back if they need 75 feet up front, which won't align with any of the other buildings. And I object to really everything else my wife has done. I just wanted to make sure my name got put down on the objection. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else wishing to object or have any questions? Anyone else wishing to object or have any questions? Seeing none, does the applicant wish to speak?
I can speak, yeah.
Please state your name and address and we'll go from there.
Russ Pizzini. My address is 31056 33 North in Mitchell. The reason the building is a little bigger because I was trying to give people a little bit more room. We could shrink the units down and make it a little bit tighter. We could make it work, but the reason the building for the setback at least part was I can basically give everybody about 1,000 to 1,100 square feet in a unit, which is a beautiful size for a family, but if needed to be smaller, it could be shrank if that was the case. It was just giving people a little more pride, a little bit more room to have a family, basically. So that's in a nutshell. I disagree with the traffic a little bit. Tim Hortons is more than lots of traffic, there's no question, but people, I own a couple other properties, and the people come and the people go, but it's nothing compared to, let's say, what Co-op and Tim Hortons in comparison. Yes, you're adding more traffic, but you're not going crazy. And the other part about the backyard, I own the building and the property that's touching this building, and I have a lady that lives there who takes care of the yard, and I ask her just how often do people use the backyard, and she says never. like never. And these are young people, people are busy. The backyards are pretty, we keep it mowed, we keep it nice, but it's just to look at, to be honest. Maybe there'll be some kids playing in the back, but I've owned the one on Cambridge, like right in front, for around 11 years, and she said she doesn't even know if she's seen people, outside of people who smoke in the backyard that show up from wherever, but in a nutshell, that's basically it. It could be downsized, it needed to be, it's just trying to give more space for people, that's it.
Okay.
It's on my dime.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Councillor Fair.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Did I read in here somewhere that the trees in the back are going to stay?
The trees, everything between the two properties stay, even the Christmas, or the evergreens on the front, probably where a sidewalk needs to be, will stay. The trees right in the very middle will need to be removed. There's willows and some scraggly stuff. There is 2 nice trees I wish I had at home, but in the long run, they will be in the way. Outside of that, everything on there is a little bit on the one side to the south that might be able to stay. There's enough room if we can make it work. But there are a willow run down the middle and one very nice tree that will have to go.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Councillor Siemens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, is there a plan to amalgamate the properties?
Sorry?
Are there plans to amalgamate the properties on one title?
Yes, that's the hope. Like the 122 and 124?
Yes.
It's hoping to make it one title, yeah.
Thank you.
The buildings actually are getting built in 2 separate buildings right on the property line with a firewall down the middle. I'm not sure if that adds any value, probably not, but if that makes a difference.
Councillor.
One further question through you, Mr. Mayor. That was, because that is what the plan states, so then just wanted to confirm that. The other question is the boulevard with one of the engineering comments is that you might have issues with snow removal and managing the snow load on the property in combination with what the highway pushes to the side and to the middle, but there's a concern there. How are you, is there any plans?
In this case, we'll have to move it. Like on the other side, go back 5 years ago, we had a massive snowstorm and you guys clean the street and you push it. And then we push it back, before we know it, we have to haul it away. So in case of that, we will have to remove it. No way around it.
One further, the question regarding the garbage truck. Does it need to back out onto the street? Have you, the question from?
We have made that, it's been looked at, it does work. Like, if people don't like it, it does work. There's enough room when we presented it, so.
Okay, thank you. Further questions for Mr. Sidney?
I've got a question actually of administration.
Okay, anyone else questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you. You want a question for the applicant, for administration before we close the public hearing or after?
I think I'd do it before.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, one of the subjects that came up there was a sidewalk, and that would be a concern that I would have as well. If this was to move ahead, is there a sidewalk in the works on that stretch of road? And if so, would there be would the development include a component where the developer would pay a portion of that sidewalk at this point when he develops it?
Mr. Workentine.
2 parts to my response. There is not currently a sidewalk planned for that particular block. It's not known what the implications would be to install. That would have to be looked at. And secondly, the capital development fees that are a requirement with residential development do include a component for sidewalk contributions.
Thank you. We still have the public hearing open. Mr. Sidney, you want to I'll let you make final comments. I see
I have one more comment.
Okay, please take the podium, state your name or we know your name and address.
I have a question for administration. From my understanding is that per the bylaw, the lots have to be zoned per lot, not as one. If they wanted to zone it as one, do they not have to join the lots first and then ask for the rezoning?
I understand you just like to see some clarification on the 2 sizes and whether they meet. So, yep, that's fair. Mr. Workentine, do you want to just state how this transpires when it comes to 2 small lots being made into 1 large lot and the rezoning aspect of that?
Typically, when there are applications to rezone and propose developments such as this one, part of the process requires that the developer enter into a development agreement with the city, and one of the requirements in the development agreement would be the consolidation of title.
Thank you. All right. Does the applicant wish to have everyone's now thinking of things here? Councillor Funk, go ahead.
That answer got me, so for administration through.
Go ahead.
So then, until this can go forward, even if we approve this, the lots have to be amalgamated? Is that just a clarification?
One of the conditions of approval is that the developer enter into a development agreement. That development agreement requires that the developer proceed with a consolidation of title, essentially creating one lot where there is currently two. That then provides the required sizing that is necessary in order for the rezoning to be considered and ultimately, if council chooses, approved.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll give the last word to the applicant.
The last thing I'd have to say is the houses are tired. They were built in the late 60s. We have put money into them. They are looking nastier all the time, for lack of a better word. This building isn't a wishy-washy building. It's going to be absolutely gorgeous as far as beautifying that corner, and it will look super nice as far as smartening up the neighborhood a little bit. So, first, we're going to have to throw a lot of money at these old houses, and they're more tired when you look at them than you even would believe. So, it's just trying to get rid of a bit of a problem at the same time. But
Thank
that's
you.
all.
Thank you. We'll close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Swagstra?
I'll move second reading of the rezoning.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Funk, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we consider a request like this in terms of moving from residential low density to residential medium density, we consider a number of things. We obviously look at the location, we look at what are the surrounding properties like, we look at what street does it go onto, we look at the question of what is the impact it's going to have. We even consider issues such as what is the impact on trees, and are there concerns that immediate neighbors could have. And I just want to quote from the city planner's report to us, because I think it encapsulates this about as well as it can be done. Here's what the city planner states. There are plenty of medium density developments surrounding the proposed site. The properties on the west side are medium density, as are the properties directly across the street. The proposed development will contain 16 dwelling units within one building. The lot does not fall within the multifamily infill area, so those particular requirements do not apply in this situation. It should be noted that the developer will be keeping as many trees as possible on the site. The proposed development has created enough parking as well as the location for garbage pickup. As the development spans across two lots, consolidation will be required. The development will have access onto Brandt Street, so there will be no traffic impact on the surrounding properties. So in terms of the types of criteria that we look at, in terms of the question of residential medium density, when we're approving a rezoning in principle, this meets all those things. It's clearly laid out here, and that is why our staff recommendation, where we have a city planner, we have other staff members as well to look at this, their expert advice is that we approve the rezoning, and I think it makes sense in this case.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Yes, thank you. I want to echo the comments of Councillor Swagstra also, but I also want to add that I believe it is compatible for the area. I was very glad that the developer looks like he's agreeable. He will work with downsizing if it's a possibility, if it has to be done. I do believe too all traffic will go south. I don't see a huge problem with the traffic onto Reimer at this point. And I would just, I'd like to see areas like this that need to be rejuvenated, We've seen that across the road. There's multifamily there. There were old houses that were torn down, new buildings, tractors were put up, housing many people. I think this is where we're going to get our population density, and right by a school, I think this can work.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Parent.
Yes, I will vote in favor of the motion as well. I believe that this is a very good fit for the area, being that it is on our Brandt Road highway and will allow for easy access for traffic. As well, I think we need to keep in mind that we do require a development agreement that will address many of the concerns expressed here tonight, such as how it looks, how it fits in the neighborhood, if it's the right size, if it's aligned properly, if there's room for garbage pickup, snow removal. All of those concerns will be addressed in the development agreement. So I believe this is a good motion and I will support it.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Siemens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the motion, but I do also agree with some of the concerns regarding foot traffic in that area. And I think it might force the city to look at a sidewalk down the road, a development of this type. But and also, I do continue to have concerns about exactly those issues that were brought up. But I agree that this fits in as a RMD area, and it does fit the surrounding properties.
Thank you. Further discussion? Anything in closing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to comment that assuming that the maximum is approved in the development agreement, we're talking about 16 residential units. So in terms of the scale of medium density, this is pretty small as far as medium density goes, 16 residential units.
Thank you. All right, Council, this is a vote on second reading. All those in favor? Carried. We will not give third reading at this time, and we will hold our decision on the variation until this proceeds to the municipal board, where then we'll get our information back. All right. We're going to move into delegation, and that is Mr. David Banman. Mr. Banman, I'll ask you to take the podium. I'll ask you to state your name and address as well.
David Banman, I'm located at 355 Valerie Lane in Steinbach. Get used to my glasses. I can see everybody else at the council table has glasses, but I'm just starting. I thought I could maybe beat the age, but it doesn't work that way. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. I'm standing before you tonight to talk about a long-standing issue and maybe a slightly touchy issue, Sunday shopping. I'm coming here as a citizen first, not necessarily as a business person or an applicant or a member of any organization, but somebody who's just an individual who's interested in seeing Steinbach remain a healthy and vibrant place to live, worship and work as well. I think I can say pretty much with certainty that every one of us in this room has been a Sunday shopper in Steinbach over the past couple of months, whether we're buying gas or for a vehicle at co-op, having lunch at a restaurant, after church, swimming at the aquatic center, attending a Pistons hockey game, or buying a loaf of bread at the convenience store. All these actions are considered Sunday shopping. They require people to work and service. The list doesn't even include a Sunday shopping trip to Winnipeg, which is a trip I've made, I think along with countless other Steinbachers over the past year. While Sunday shopping laws used to be absolute, these days there are dozens of exceptions for businesses to be open on Sundays. These might include lounges, pharmacies, amusement halls, movie theaters, tourism facilities, motor vehicle repairs and service shops, one I found interesting, boat rental, or any business with 4 employees or less. The list is probably about 2 pages long, which actually shocked me when I actually went and looked at the legislation. In fact, if you decide to close your business every Saturday, you're actually allowed to open on Sunday, regardless of the type of business you have. So if Walmart would decide to choose to close on every Saturday, they could actually open on Sunday. So the restrictions often lead to pretty strange results, and I think we're just kind of maybe starting to see some of those strange results, like being able to walk into a restaurant and buy food, but not being able to buy it from a grocery store. You can go to the movies, but you can't necessarily go to Walmart to buy that same movie if you want to watch it at home. So those ideas behind Sunday shopping was to basically give workers a day of rest. The laws were originated in the 17th century before laws limited people to minimum work weeks, and before people could move and work and worship in pretty much whatever fashion they choose. These days, a person whose religious beliefs prevent them from working on their holy day, whatever day that is, that might be Friday, that might be Saturday, that might be Sunday, has their job protected by the law. In the past, that just simply wasn't the case, and Sunday was the allocated day, and that's when everybody had the day off. I don't think that's necessarily how society and our community treats Sundays today. People with shift work or service industry jobs might have a weekday off rather than a Sunday, And many of us choose to spend Sundays with our family engaged in activities, such as going out for lunch, to the movies, playing golf, or even going to the mall. In other words, shopping. Worship services, too, are not just held at one time of the day or one day of the week anymore. They're spread out over the day and over during the week as well. So I think the fact of the matter is that Sunday shopping laws don't really serve the purpose for which they were designed anymore, and they don't reflect the realities of how we live our lives in the community today. I think one of the things that bothers me the most is that shopping laws aren't necessarily applied equally across the board. I'm not sure how we can tell a food server at Smitty's that he or she doesn't deserve the day off, but somebody who works at a grocery store does. I can have a chef prepare a meal for me at a restaurant, but I can't buy the ingredients for that meal at the same ingredients at a grocery store to cook for myself on the same day. We could also spend probably a long time talking about economic benefits of Sunday shopping, including job creation and increased sales for businesses, but I won't speak about that today. I think the main aspect of this debate are equal treatment for workers and a choice for consumers who have the opportunity today to decide what their day of rest is going to be, whether that's Sunday or a different day. And as politicians, this is a touchy subject. I can attest that myself. People will be divided on this issue. It's a pretty divisive issue. A lot of people will say, this is just the way it is. This is the way it's always been, so why should we change today? However, I think if we look back, things actually have changed a lot in the last 40 years. I remember growing up as a kid, 40-some years ago, and walking down Main Street, and there was not a restaurant open, you couldn't find a restaurant. You'd be lucky if you could find a gas station that would serve you. Nothing was open. It was quiet. Everybody spent the day at home. That just doesn't happen today. Today, people are moving around and doing a lot of different activities and using services that are available to them that are open here in Steinbach on Sunday. So never mind, actually, people getting in their cars and going to Winnipeg to shop. So I think with all these changes that have happened, it's hard to argue that keeping the inconsistent arrangement for which businesses stay open and which stay closed is really in the best interest of the city, particularly when a large part of our workforce is already forced to work on a Sunday. And almost every citizen here participates in Sunday shopping to begin with. My goal with the presentation today is just really to start a dialogue with City Council in order to maybe begin the process to look at passing a bylaw that would allow retail businesses to open on Sunday rather than just the ones that are actually allowed by the Retail Business Holiday Closing Act. I hope to maybe reach out to employers and consumers and retailers over the next couple of weeks to kind of get a thought process. It's something that's been bothering me over the last couple of years, especially with how we see these services expanding over the last few years. So I think it's also a chance for council to be proactive and address an issue that actually reflects the realities of our community, maybe rather than an idealized version of how we see our community. It's a little bit different. So it's just basically a time for me to maybe allow this conversation to start blooming so we can have a talk about it. So, in conclusion, I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, but it was just more of something that's been on my mind for a while, and I thought probably needed to be addressed shortly in the community.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to call you Councillor Banman, but that was a while ago.
That was a long time ago.
Your spot is vacant today, but any questions for the delegation, Mr. Banman, today? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Any further comments from council? Councillor Fair.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I like the idea that you're going to do some research among the retailers and the shoppers alike. I'm sure that on shoppers level, it'll be a no-brainer. On the other side of the coin, who knows? And I'm glad that somebody's going to take that on and get a bit of a feel for where things are at as far as the business community is as well.
Thank you. All right, council, let's move to Number 8, the reports and recommendations from the city manager, and number 9, administration. We have accounts payable in the back of the book. Administration has provided. You've all had a chance to review those. Can I have someone approve those, please? Make a motion to approve those, please. Councillor Funk, second by Councillor Siemens. Any discussion? Any questions? Call for the question. All those in favor? We have the minor variations on page 59.
Motion to approve.
Minor subdivisions, excuse me. On page 59, we have Councillor Siemens, second by Councillor Funk. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. We have zoning bylaw 2100. This is on page 60. Mr. Workentine, I'll ask you to introduce this, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, in conjunction with the recent annexation that was approved by the province earlier this year, also with respect to the bylaw 2099, which is a proposed update of the city's official community plan. Part of the overall land use policy review that the city has conducted is also prompting administration to recommend council consideration of an updated zoning bylaw, bylaw 2100. This matter has been presented to council at committee in 2 separate occasions over the past half a year or so. The city has also held an open house and received comments from many members of the public with respect to this proposal. With respect to the document itself, it has been amended a couple of times over the past number of months, and councillors received a copy of the proposed zoning bylaw document and policy content along with the agenda package. The changes that administration is recommending with respect to the current zoning bylaw are listed in the package. The primary amendments that are being suggested appear on page 69 and on page 70. As I mentioned, City Council has seen this list before, and some changes as a result of that committee meeting were made. With respect to one policy in particular, with respect to surfacing, there are 3 options that administration is presenting for council's information on page 66, 67, and 68. That was one particular policy that was not completed as a result of the committee review process. And with respect to the changes, administration is recommending the policy statement as presented on page 66, which is essentially retaining the existing surfacing requirement that development of properties is subject to. However, there are 2 other options that are presented should council wish to adopt those. The bylaw itself is presented, and to conclude, administration is recommending that City Council proceed with first reading of zoning bylaw 2100, and if so, then the required public hearing will be scheduled for a future date in July.
All right, thank you very much. All right, Council, we have to go through a little bit of a process here, and number 1 is we have been in discussions and looking at the zoning bylaw extensively over the last number of months, and this does reflect a lot of our discussions and the slight changes and variations, and also the open houses open house that we had. Also, some of that information gathered is reflected in this as well. We have a zoning bylaw that has been given to us to review previously. We're going to deal with the one specific issue we didn't resolve in those discussions separately from the zoning bylaw itself. And so I'm going to ask council, first of all, if you're generally comfortable with this process, we're going to set the zoning bylaw aside, have a discussion about the three options that were given to us in regards to surfacing, hard surfacing of parking lots, and then we'll move to the zoning bylaw itself. Are we comfortable through consensus on that? Okay, thank you. All right, council, then the question I'm going to put forward in front of you is in regards to page 66, 67, and 68. You've been given three options. Frankly, you can create your own fourth option if you'd like, but I think administration has certainly done their homework here and will proceed with these options in front of us unless someone else says so. But I just want to open a discussion, and I would like it done by motion to move us forward in a certain direction with one of these options, and then we can proceed from there. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Penner.
I would like to make a motion that we adopt the recommendation of administration, option 1.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder? I can remove myself from the chair to second if I'd like, but no seconder? All right. Then Councillor Fair, you raised your hand.
I would move that we would adopt option 2.
All right. Go ahead. I'll let you speak to that. Sorry, is there a seconder? Is there a seconder? Councillor Funk, thank you. Councillor Fair, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The reason this came here was exactly for that purpose. We had a lot of people that were having difficulty. A lot of times when you have startup business and they're on a gravel road, a lot of times the property values are probably somewhat less, and a lot of times there isn't a lot of money to do those things like asphalting or hard surfacing. It would be a luxury, and a lot of people aren't able to do that. I would like to point out also that as a city, we are, if we go and make everybody else asphalt, even if they're on about a gravel road, then we need to lead by example. Our service shop that we added to approximately 2-3 years ago is abutting a gravel road, and it has a gravel yard. And so I think that if we're going to hold our citizens and business people to a standard, I think we need to hold ourselves to that. So I think that option 2 will address the situation. Yeah.
Okay. Further discussion, Councillor Funk.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. For me, it's very simple. It comes down to common sense. It's like for like. If we're going to create a gravel service for them for service, then we shouldn't expect them to give us more than gravel for their yard.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Anything closing?
Nope.
All right. Council, we have a question in front of us, and it's in regards to looking at paving on different surfaces. Obviously, we've had a clear standard over the last 8 years of having urban standards throughout the city, and I think one of the things that we've prided ourselves on as a city is to have high standards. We have had some variations to that where we have had requests. We've granted them because it made sense at the time. But there have been a lot of businesses that have put high standard pavement and parking lots in. And it's been generally good because it happened. It transpires that it's good for their citizens or good for their clients, and it's also a standard that is respected and is something that is good for the city in the long run, because we end up having paved roads that do end up in front of these places eventually, and then we have that same standard across the board. I think going away from the high standard that we have is a mistake, and so I will not support this. Call for the question. All those in favor of option 2? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, now we'll move to the zoning bylaw, including that option 2 standard. And this is to prove that there's a lot of compromise involved in what we do here as council, and that we have a big document of many pages, and sometimes there are things in there that we wish were slightly different, but they aren't. And now let's move to forward with this zoning bylaw. Zoning bylaw, including the option 2 that we just voted on. Can I have a motion to approve that, please? Councillor Swagstra moves to approve. Councillor Fair, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, the zoning bylaw is an extensive document. It guides planning and, within the city in regards to what goes where and required sizes of lots, all those sorts of things, zoning categories. The reason that we normally review it every 5 years, we're doing that sooner this time because of the fact that the city's acquired, has annexed a significant amount of land, and we need to make sure that our zoning bylaw adequately encapsulates that land. So a number of the changes in the zoning bylaw are to reflect that reality, and there are a number of other things that council has looked at. And what I will say that's very positive about this process is that we have, even before this going to a public hearing, we haven't even gone to the public hearing yet, we're going to have a public hearing, but prior to that we had an open house. We've been actively soliciting feedback from the community, and we've had open meetings and open debates on some of these topics, including that parking topic, at multiple meetings that have been widely reported. So this is a document that is getting a lot of public attention, as it should. The zoning bylaw is very important, and so I certainly look forward to hearing from more from the public when we have second reading.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Fair.
There's not much to add, Mr. Mayor, but I think I would like to compliment our administration for the way that they walked through this process. And I know that there's people that brought, the people in the annexed area that brought some situations forward, and we worked with them, and we worked through those details, and I think that they're happy. And so that when the taxpayers are happy, we're happy.
Further discussion. Councillor Siemens.
Just to add further, looking forward to discussion, and potentially the people that it most affects is developers as we move forward, and all the people that want to make change to their current yards. So it'll be interesting to see who all shows up at a public hearing with a document of this size, but look forward to that as well. I think it is a well-written document, and it does serve us in the future.
Thank you. Anything further? Anything in closing? All right. Council, obviously you've been working diligently on this. Administration has been working on this, and we've had our open houses. We've had a lot of dialogue, and it's a document full of good things and things that we've had compromise on, and that's an important piece of what we do here as a council. When it comes to including the new larger city of Steinbach, I think it's really important that there was some listening that went on in those open houses where we saw the need to make sure that we dealt with the future development areas appropriately for the people that are presently there, and look forward to seeing this document continue to evolve over the coming years as it reflects what type of city that we want to see. Call for the question. All those in favor of first reading? Carried. Mr. Workendine, what day will that public hearing be on?
I believe we will schedule it for July the 17th.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. Any questions of council? Seeing none, we will move to the correspondence. We have the correspondence of the Association of Manitoba Municipalities, and this is a newsletter from May 9th, as well as a number of other information. You all had a chance to read that. Any questions? I might be the guy to answer them. I may not be. All right. 11B, we have the Seine-Rat River Conservation District minutes from the 17th and the 18th on page 76. Take that as information. We have a letter in regards to donation from enVision request, page 87. Take that as information. We'll move to the 11D, Stephen Derksen request in regards to Clearsping Greens sidewalk. Would like to see a sidewalk put in. Any comments from council? Councillor Siemens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That has been a point of discussion here at council and other places for quite a number of years, ever since Clearsping Greens went in. I would like to recommend to council that this goes on our next study session agenda for further discussion.
All right.
I would second that, if you're making a motion.
Okay.
I will make that motion.
You're making it a motion? All right. You're seconding that? Okay, go ahead.
I think, Mr. Mayor, This has been one of the pieces of our community that doesn't have access by foot or by bike unless it's on a narrow asphalt highway or highway, a road. Actually, it is a highway. It's a bypass around Steinbach. But either on Old Tom or Park Road. So I think we've talked about this various times. We've looked at it. Unofficially, we've looked at it various times. I think this would be a good point to consider, and potentially we either have to go across the golf course or go in a different direction. But I think it is something that we need to look at council to connect this part of our community by footpath and bike path in some manner.
All right, thank you. Further discussion? Anything further? All right, council, this has been looked at before by us as council. We did see the fairly hefty price tag at one point of a few options. There has been some land ownership changes in that area for the last while. So we'll see where we end up when it comes to maybe further discussions on this. All those in favor of putting it on the study session agenda? Opposed? Carried. All right, 11E, we have a letter in regards to sidewalks, different type of sidewalk situation. This is on page 90, and this is in regards to, I know Mr. Friesen is here today, in regards to Cottonwood Bend. Council, you received this information. You have also received some other information from others today, at least I have, and I know some of you have as well. But is there any direction council would like to go on this? Councillor Fair.
I would like to recommend that this goes to review with the RCMP, maybe their task force, to see whether there's a solution. I know removing the sidewalk is probably one of them. There may be something else that may be able to be done, but something does need to be done here. So I think that we should refer it and get a recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Siemens and then Councillor Fine.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we move this as an agenda item to the next council meeting in the short term, and so that we can have administration file a report.
File a report. All right, we have two suggestions here. Mr. Funk, you wanted to...
I would like to make an amendment to that motion.
You need a second first.
Sorry.
Let's have a second.
You're right, sorry, you did... Yeah, is there a seconder to Councillor Siemens' motion?
Well, I'd like to second it.
Sorry.
I'll throw a motion there. This is a motion.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'll second it if we have a little bit of flexibility in when the report comes in, because I'm...
Okay, thank you, go ahead.
Thank you for seconding it. I would like this report on the next council agenda so that we can deal with it in 2 weeks for a variety of different reasons. The background to this is I did a review of the neighborhood yesterday. I was in the neighborhood twice to speak to the different residences, and there are a lot of concerns. And the letter as the letter is stated already, to add to that, there's additional vandalism. There are threats to the neighbors. There's people who don't walk down that sidewalk during the day, during the school day, because they feel threatened. And there's a lot of different issues around the events that go on there. So the motion I put before council is for administration to file a report, and I would like the report filed on the next council meeting that happens in 2 weeks. And I would like, in that report, I would like it to include any past occurrences that the city departments have dealt with regarding this sidewalk, either through parks or the community services officer. I would like to get a report from the RCMP on the past incidents, and they have been called to a number of them. I also spoke to our Staff Sergeant Harold Lanigan, and he agrees that there have been issues in the past, and that should be part of the report. I'd also like the Hanover School Division to be involved sometime. This is an SRSS student issue, although it doesn't take place on Hanover School Division grounds. I don't know if there's anything, but they need to be addressed, that this is a part of a concern that we do have with the students that attend SRSS. And also I'd like to know from administration in their view, and I'm sure that they have looked at this, if there might be any options and possible recommendations as to next steps. And we have recommendations, next steps in the letter. We have different things, but it might take a unique situation as to what this is. But overall, I think we need a little bit more information on the whole thing. We can talk to the residents, that's one, certainly one area, but also from the city standpoint, do we have legal liabilities? Do we have, is there any liabilities that we need to connect with? Is there, if they're just looking at options, sometimes what happens is that we dialogue with these events, and then there is a different type of solution that does come forward that we can't think of that occurred meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Spectra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a lot of items. I don't think that in 2 weeks that is feasible. I think that would take more than 2 weeks to come up with all that information. I'm presuming that staff do have other things to do in the next 2 weeks other than just this. There is an issue here that's been addressed, that's been raised, and I do think it makes sense to get some more information on this, no question. This is not a brand new issue. This has been around for a while, and it's not going to be solved we're not going to get a report within 2 weeks that's going to sort of recommend 3 options, we just do one of those. But I am in favor of the intent of the motion. That's why the condition of seconding was to remove the immediate time element and allow some time to do this properly. I do think we need to get more information from administration. And frankly, as Councillor Siemens has pointed out, there is a variety of places, a variety of different sources of information here. I mean, one of the things to look at is the feasibility of what's being requested in regards to the sidewalk, in terms of, because if you close the sidewalk, presumably there's a cost involved, there's things that would have to happen, there's all sorts of questions there. But then beyond that, there's a community issue here in regard to the things that are happening. And do we even know that closing the sidewalk would resolve these issues, or would this area be continued to use as is? So let's get more information, let's look at this, let's take it seriously, but let's also give it the proper time so that we can actually examine this properly. The issue didn't arise, suddenly, in terms of in the last 2 weeks, we're not going to resolve it within the next 2 weeks, but we do need to try to do something to resolve it. So I do support the intent of the motion that we ask administration to give us a report with some options looking to some of these issues.
All right. Thank you. I may go back to the timeline as we have a further discussion, but we'll go from there. Councillor Fair.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I surprise, I agree with Councillor Swagster on this one. I think we have time on our side. The school's out in roughly 3 weeks, and so I think that we have the summer to address this issue. So if we even if we address this a month from now, I think it's not going to be too late. So I would concur with that. So.
Thank you, Councillor Funk.
I would like to thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak to the time issue too. I think time is a little bit on our side, but I think the problem will be mitigated slightly as school ends. But next week on the 13th, we have a RCP advisory committee meeting, and I would really like to bring this letter to them. I would like to then get firsthand from Harold Laniga what's been done, what kind of calls have been made, what have been taken care of. Not just on the sidewalk, but in the area in general, right, with the school. What's been done with Hanover School Division. We have 2 men on that board that work with youth constantly. And I think we could pick their minds, we could see where we should go with this, and that's why I'd like a little more time, because it could take a meeting, maybe 2 meetings, to get a good recommendation from the RCP committee also.
Okay, thank you. Which is exactly what you're suggesting is exactly what Councillor Fair suggested as well, and so I think we're probably doing both of what you wanted to see. So absolutely, we'll give this letter to you to put on your agenda, and you can have that full discussion there. But that discussion does need to flow through to administration so that they can use that as they work on their report. Comfortable with that? If we approve this, sorry. Councillor Penner.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that we have had some success addressing businesses that have experienced vandalism or trouble with loitering and that kind of issue, and that has been very successful in the past, and I'm confident that we can address these issues.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Siemens.
Still looking for a friendly amendment to the timeline.
Through consensus, are you comfortable with moving the timeline to having a report this summer?
One of the issues around, if we're going to make a change, or that change has to come in the summer, it doesn't happen because it has to be scheduled. if there's a change, and that has to happen before. So I would, if it's not comfortable in 2 weeks, where's the comfort level? In 4 weeks, in 1 month? Yeah.
May I make a suggestion, and that is that a report comes to council before the end of July.
That's too far in my opinion, but I will accept that.
Okay, and it may be sooner depending on, yeah. Okay, through consensus, are you comfortable with that friendly amendment?
Yeah, that would be the 17th of July.
Okay, are we comfortable with that?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Sorry, I almost didn't vote. That's approved. All right, thank you. I will address Mr. Friesen. And Mr. Friesen, we understand your concern. We are going to get more information on it, and we will proceed with this, looking at it seriously.
Yeah, we've heard that before.
Okay. All right. There is no other business. Then a motion to adjourn. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Funk. All those in favor? Carried.